to our session today, which is Reclaim Flexibility, Modern Solutions for Digital Collection Stewardship. I'm Roger Schoenfeld. I'm the Managing Director for JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services. Just before we get started, a few little housekeeping notes. We are recording the webinar, so we'll be sending a link to it after the event to everyone who's registered. And you're welcome to submit questions throughout the session. We will probably hold most of them for the dedicated Q&A at the end, but if there's anything that comes up that we can speak to quickly in real time, we'll try to do that. So thanks so much for being here. We've got, I think, a very interesting program today, and let's get started. So let me just say a couple of words about where we are today. As we reflect on some of the pain points that libraries are facing in terms of their abilities to steward their collections, their digital collections, distinctive and special collections, we commissioned a report that I'd really encourage you to take a look at if you haven't already seen, by our colleague Emily Hardman. Bridging capacity and care. You can click on that little QR code if it's helpful to get it. That report surfaced some really interesting and important challenges. Legacy infrastructure that in many cases is limiting access or the efficiency of libraries and librarians and archivists in managing collections, and in some cases limiting collections growth. We are seeing fragmented systems and in some cases really complex tools. So we see this really profound tension between the weight of these aging systems, some of the impediments that they can cause in terms of our ability to innovate and act efficiently, and on the other hand, the commitments to care and access and impact that all of us feel for the collections under our stewardship. So we here at Ithaca at JSTOR, we believe the solution is a set of flexible and modern and values-aligned tools and platforms that can really advance stewardship in a modern context. And so, you know, we really want to see the purpose of what we're doing here today as a conversation between and with a set of peers, library professionals and leaders who have transitioned onto JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services to try to understand some of what drove their decisions, how they made those decisions, what they learned, and some of the directions that they're now able to head in. So that's basically what we'll start with, and then a moment or two after that, we'll have a very brief but I think helpful demo of some of what stewardship looks like today. So let me just take a second to introduce our two really wonderful panelists. We have Rachel Walton, who is an associate professor and librarian and head of library digital strategies and scholarly communications at Rollins College. Her work specializes in digital curation and preservation and the management of online collections. And she oversees systems like the library's institutional repository, digital asset management system, and digital publishing platform. So she's really quite familiar with all of those systems and leading on them. She also leads on digitization projects that expand access to distinctive collections and scholarly communications, and has done some really important work on OER and digital humanities. In addition, we have Olivia Inglin, who is the Archivist and Special Collections Librarian at the University of Puget Sound. There she looks after classroom instruction, reference, research services, special collections, and university records acquisition and student employee management. So a really broad and significant portfolio. And additionally, she manages digitization projects and the institutional repository. So, Rachel and Olivia, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to turn on your cameras, we can move into the panel session. Thank you so much for being here today. So where I'd love to get us started is just by asking a little bit more background on sort of your migration. When did your migration take place? Like, what was your role in it, and how are you situated excuse me, within it? So Rachel, if you'd like to start, and then excuse me, Olivia, if you'd like to start, that would be great.
Yeah, so our migration took place between 2023 and 2024. The decision to migrate all of our digital collections to specifically JSTOR Forum, now Digital Stewardship, was a decision that I did not make. It actually was a predecessor of mine, but we opted to go with JSTOR because we were already using ArtStore Shared Shelf. And so a lot of the functionality, the capabilities, and the types of collections that existed in that space, we had on two other existing platforms. And so we opted to do that migration. And then I managed that. I should say I managed that migration, and then now manage our platform as well.
Thank you. Okay, and Rachel.
Yeah, so we had been using the same tool for almost 15 years here at Rollins. I've been here for 10 of those years, and that tool really stayed the same in terms of its offering during that time. And so when we received support from a new director or dean here at our college, we were really ready to make some change. We did our migration this year in April. We did it pretty speedily, and we are thrilled with what we're working with since then. I will say that in the time that we have been part of the JSTOR Digital Stewardship group, we've seen more improvements in that tool in less than a year than we have in the tool we used for almost 15 years. So I think that the folks who were a part of that decision making are already kind of seeing the positive impact of that choice. Even though it was a speedy migration, we were really happy to make the change.
Okay, thanks both. We're going to dig into a bunch of these things a little bit further. So I wonder if you could say a little bit more, first, Rachel, about what prompted your reassessment of existing systems? Like, what were some of the frustrations or limitations that you were faced with at the time?
Yeah, so I mean, we are teaching college, so hopefully everything that we do here is about our student experience and the teaching and learning. And what we were seeing is that students were really not working with our digital collections tool. It was kind of seen as a bit of a dinosaur and compared to the other tools the library and archives offered. The interface was frustrating and not as searchable, and it really didn't have that kind of quick search and navigation that they were looking for. They didn't tend to use it. We looked at our usage stats. It wasn't happening anymore. In addition, kind of on the back end, on our end, the metadata and the editing privileges and the autonomy that we really wanted in an administrative user interface, it just wasn't there. So adding to collections or growing them was kind of a challenge. We couldn't ask student workers to kind of jump that learning curve. And so what was happening is we were kind of getting a stale collection that wasn't really growing, had a lot of frustrations on the back end, and wasn't really an interface that students gravitated towards or used frequently. So that was why we decided to reassess and rethink.
Thank you. Olivia, could you would you like to speak a little further about what prompted your reassessment?
Yeah, I would say similar to Rachel, our digital platforms, I'll say, were not getting used largely because we had 3 of them. So people often didn't know where to go to access certain collections, and it was quite cumbersome to try and direct users as to where to go. And also, as a teaching institution, for us, one of the big ones was cost. We were supporting and paying for 3 different digital platforms, which just was not tenable, especially after COVID. So we kind of relooked our library budget and determined that we needed to be on one digital platform, so we opted obviously for JSTOR. In addition to that, we also had some staffing constraints. We also couldn't have students be working in our digital platforms because all three of them were different, so trying to create the tools to train them in those spaces was just not manageable for us. And we also previously had a scholarly communications librarian position that unfortunately we lost. So that responsibility got transferred to the archives and special collections, where it just kind of really reiterated that we needed to be with one platform where everything was hosted and that we could work with.
It seems like there are some common threads between those two experiences. Are there any other or broader pain points that you were seeing with that pre-existing environment, complexity or fragmentation or support gaps that you'd want to highlight? Olivia, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, aside from some of the tools being very, very clunky, we were using some older tools as well, and just the interface was honestly horrendous. But we also found it then really difficult to standardize our practices around digital collections because we were on 3 different platforms. So things like metadata standards, file standards, our cataloging procedures, because all were so different and they were dealing with different types of collections, there just wasn't good standardization across the board, which became really frustrating over time.
Rachel, did you want to add anything there on that pain points question?
I loved Olivia's point about, you know, us trying to improve our own work internally, our policies, our standards. There's been a lot of work with quality metadata over the last couple of decades. People are doing that work differently. For example, with us, we were trying to do better work with usage rights, so people know how they can use our tool, our resources, and if they can reuse them. We hadn't been doing that well in the distant past, and all that legacy comes through now, right? Like when we were trying to revise those items and show better explanations of how these materials could be used, it was so painful and had to do at the item level that it wasn't happening quickly. And I think that we really wanted to do better in those areas. So again, as your team and the you know, the profession grows, these tools really need to help those changes. And you know, we were just really feeling stifled, especially in that area.
It's really enlightening to hear about like some of the challenges that, you know, and how they at the time anyway kind of carried through to the work and impacted things. So I really appreciate that. That said, I think we all know it's not always simple to make a decision to consider an alternative system. I mean, people feel you know, all sorts of different constraints. It often requires leadership alignment and institutional commitment. And let's face it, it can be a real headache to make the investment of time. And you know, we're well aware both of you know, you've highlighted staff cutbacks previously, but you know, we know we're entering into you know, a challenging environment today as well. So you know, these changes are not always easy to make. So I'd love to kind of reflect a little bit, ask you to reflect a little bit about how the decision-making process, just to make the decision to consider an alternative system, what that felt like. Rachel, could you start, please?
Yeah, sure. So we had new leadership, and we felt that was an opportunity to make a case that we needed some change. So we collected things like usage statistics that showed decline over time of engagement with our previous tool. We took some data points away from what our staff time was being spent on. So we were calculating, hey, how many of these could be done in an hour, and how many hours is it going to take to do this? And when we came to our new dean with the argument that improving the work that was in our current system would actually be more time consuming and potentially costly, and then thinking about some great new tools that were already out there, that really opened up the conversation. We also did some price point analysis. We were looking at what other people offered, kind of the list of features, and you know, when we joined, it was called JSTOR Forum, and when we presented that to the dean, there were just a lot of green check boxes there, meaning a lot of features and for price points that were kind of what we were already paying. So the data sold it, but also just open, new leadership open to technical change, that freed up a lot of conversation. And finally, just some convincing remarks from the archival staff that, again, spent so much of their time in the tool. I think that was the combination of things that needed to happen in order to kind of make that important decision.
Yeah, it sounds like a real kind of moment of opportunity, the way you characterized that. Olivia, could I ask you to speak to that as well?
Yeah, so I think I had previously mentioned that I did not make the decision. I was not one of the stakeholders that made that decision. It predates me. But what I do know from communicating with stakeholders that were involved in the process, that it was largely a cost-saving measure for us. As I've already kind of reiterated, we could no longer, it did not make sense for us to pay for 3 platforms. And they opted for JSTOR because of the cost savings, the functionality, and potential services based on the roadmap at the time, because it was also JSTOR Forum when we first joined. And I think another really big one was also just like the customer service support. It's a lot better than some of the other platforms that we've worked with, which made kind of the migrations pretty seamless. So, and moving forward, it's been really nice as well.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We are Jason will say a little bit more in just a moment or two about the directions we're going in with stewardship, which is really building on the JSTOR Forum roadmap, as you both articulated. In this, one of the other factors that in my experience anyway has been an impediment in libraries thinking about moving to more modern systems environments is that sometimes the transition from one platform to another can be really significant. The switching costs can be significant. The transition experience can be mediocre. Understandably, we hear these stories and we think, oh goodness, I'm not sure I want to go through that kind of burden. So I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about what, after you made the decision to migrate to a different platform or to consolidate on a single platform, what was the transition like, the content and technical transition like, in terms of timeline and process and impact on staff or other stakeholders? Olivia, could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so we migrated roughly 39 collections into JSTOR. So for us, it took about a year because there was some pausing in between. The process was very simple for us. We inventoried all of our collections and then requested for the OAI tool to crawl our collections and pull them over. So it was just basically submitting a Google form multiple times for us, which was very easy on our end. The metadata transfers came across a bit messy, but that's really a reflection of, again, us having poor standardization of our metadata across collections. That's not like a JSTOR issue at all. So for us, we've had to be doing some cleanup after our transfer, but honestly, it's been a really good opportunity to create those standardizations, to create something like a metadata manual for us. So overall, we were really pleased with the process, and it was really, really seamless for us.
I really appreciate hearing that. Rachel?
Yeah, we have a much smaller set of collections than Olivia's talking about. Sounds like they were using, really distributed, had a bunch of systems that they were trying to pull together, and that sounds really complicated. I would have been afraid of that too. I'm so glad it went well. We're kind of a small team, and we have like maybe 10 collections, and they're not massive, but they're really highly used now, thank goodness. And so because we focus on our collections being a part of the curriculum here at our college. So what we did was actually move our tiny grouping of collections in only 30 days. And I was pretty nervous about that because it was during the spring semester, which can be a busy time. A lot of times people are like, oh no, I'm going to do that in the summer. When things are not quite so busy, I tend to want to do that as well. But because of the contract we had with our previous vendor, we had to be out by May 1st. So we told the team, the migration support team that we worked with, what our deadline was. We had a lot of the materials that Olivia was talking about ready to go, right? The inventory and the kind of metadata standards. We had all that ready. So when we handed it off, it was maybe a day over 3 weeks of time before all the content was moved over to the new platform. And after that, we were actually able to onboard brand new student workers and do some quality assurance with our metadata to make sure things migrated over really well. Turns out there were very few issues. Even in the few instances where we may have had something not mapped well, we worked with the migration team and they were able to do overall changes and edits for us as part of the migration support process. So it did happen in a month. I couldn't believe it. And I was really happy to be able to start the summer with new projects instead of continuing or starting a new migration. So my fears were thankfully not, they didn't live out, right? So I think we made the right choice to do it in the short time that we did.
That's great to hear, because we're trying very hard to make sure that that migration experience can be as smooth as possible, because otherwise it really can produce a headache. So I know that you've only, each of you made this transition, relatively recently, in the last 2 years certainly. And so I know it's maybe a little bit early to talk about outcomes, but I'd love it if you could just sort of close with a little bit of reflections on, what the current state is, what's easier now, what's possible that wasn't possible before, like what are the benefits that you're seeing. Olivia?
Yeah, I think the first major one for us is just access for patrons. It's so easy to be able to just go in, give them one link or a link to a sub collection, and it's just visibly. Also, I really like how JSTOR looks. I think it's very clear what the collections are, how they're organized, the functionality, the finding features. So that's been a really, really big benefit. In addition to that, we were able to form a digital projects committee, small as it may be, with a few members of our library staff, and we wrote ourselves a metadata manual that now we're using in practice, using to do some of that cleanup, as well as some new projects. And the final big one I'll say is having students work in the digital platform. So I've been having students do some of that remediation, like Rachel, to kind of look at some of that quality assurance for metadata. But I also now have students this year digitizing additional photographs for one of our large collections that didn't really seem like it would have been an option before because of the previous platform we were using. It was just too much training, too cumbersome, too clunky for them to do that type of work. So we've seen just vast improvements with our digital collections, and just the functionality has just been vastly improved.
Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I always want to think about the experience of our students here. And I will tell you, as a librarian with many departments that use our digital collections, they're finding what they want now. That's really the goal of this. One of the things that I think we thought about early on but didn't realize the impact of is students are already very familiar with JSTOR platforms. Some of them are even in high school using the traditional databases. We've always had that access level here at Rollins, and we were even an ArtStore member as well for many years. So students know the JSTOR platform, and using that platform as the gateway to our collections has been really transformative. I was even working with a student last week on an art history project. We did some searching, and actually something from our archival collections came up as relevant. And I didn't even know that we had that item or that there was a connection to her subject. So there's some beautiful serendipitous searching happening as well, because these platforms are so integrated. And I'm really appreciative for them. In addition, just like Olivia was saying, and I mentioned earlier, training student workers to use this tool takes maximum 25 minutes. We do a lot of spreadsheet-based work, and we have an army of student workers that help us with new projects. I will tell you, we're also a part of the pilot project for SeekLight, which is the AI tool that's a part of this. We're so honored and happy to be a part of that pilot. We used in our early training an hour of training time with the folks that were leading the SeekLight training. We uploaded more than 1,000 photographs from a new collection in less than 45 minutes. All of the metadata is ready to go. The student workers are just checking certain fields. We're going to debut it next week in time for a new event. We could not have done that on our previous system. The scale is really like life-altering in terms of workload, but also impact, right? How can we get these things out there faster, better in places that people are already working? So it's been a fantastic experience to be a part of the new SeekLight pilot, which is just such a fantastic tool, but also just to be in a new tool that people can use readily and find what they need.
Yeah, thank you both. As we're going to transition away from the panel now and towards the demo, but Rachel and Olivia, I know you'll stay around, and hopefully there will be some questions and discussion. I think your examples and experience are really helpful to hear, and we are. It's really exciting and gratifying for me to hear about some of the transformative impacts that stewardship has had, both on access and students, and the kind of impact that I think we all so deeply want to have for these amazing materials, but also on the other hand for how you manage your operations internally, and some of the ways that we can hopefully, whether it's with SeekLight or just with the basic features that the Stewardship Digital Asset Management platform offers, that we can hopefully use these systems as efficiently and as productively as possible. So thank you both. I'll ask my colleague Jason Przybylski to come join us now. And as we're transitioning, let me just say that I think what we just heard and what we're about to hear, it's a reflection of the substantial investment that our organization on behalf of the community is making in this set of systems and services. And it's just really exciting to see the potential that we think we're building. So Jason, over to you, and I'll come back in a little while for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Roger, and thank you, Rachel and Olivia. I honestly could have just listened to your stories for the rest of our time here, but I'll take a little bit of time and do a demo, show some of what we've been talking about. So it's very nice to meet you all. My name is Jason Przybylski. I'm the Associate Director for JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services Outreach, and I really focus on our participant success side. So I'm providing the support that our participants need to get set up in our systems, use our systems, and really achieve the kind of success they're looking for with their digital collections. So I'm sharing my screen now, and we'll start by looking a little bit at the front end, what it looks like when you share your collections from the digital asset management system onto JSTOR for access. With that story that Rachel told at the end there about how she was working with a student and they did a search on JSTOR, and they found, alongside the books and journals and other materials on JSTOR, they found some of Rollins's very own materials within that search. Because that's exactly the kind of impact that we think we can have by working with institutions to make their digital collections available on JSTOR. And to be clear, I did not ask Rachel to say that. That was her own example of her own experience. But that's exactly that's what we want the end goal to be here, is that people who might not know about all of the rich materials in your digital collections can find them and use them because they're available through a resource like JSTOR that we know is so integrated into existing teaching and research workflows, particularly in the humanities, arts, and social sciences. So we're looking here at an example. This is Rollins College's digital collections. And when an institution shares their digital collections from the digital asset management system onto JSTOR, in addition to their own kind of landing page, which we're seeing here, I'll come back to in a minute, all of these collections that can be shared either openly on JSTOR, in which case they are truly openly, freely available to anyone, anywhere in the world. They do not need to be at a JSTOR participating institution to find and use these collections. So collections can be made openly available or institutional only. So you can have a combination of collections that are available just to users on your campus or authenticated patrons, or collections that are openly available to anyone anywhere in the world. When those collections are shared on JSTOR, in addition to being fully indexed and searchable across JSTOR alongside all of the other rich materials available on the JSTOR platform, these collections are also indexed and discoverable through Google, which, because of JSTOR's relevancy and kind of large amount of content, we tend to kind of boost discovery through Google searches. So your digital collections will be available or discoverable through Google, as well as other search engines, as well as various library discovery services. So the idea really is that by sharing your digital collections on the JSTOR platform, you can meet people wherever they're starting their work, whether that's directly on the JSTOR platform or through your library website, or just going out to Google and starting their searches there. So when an institution shares their collections to JSTOR, they're set up with what we kind of think of as their own space within the JSTOR ecosystem. So as I said, all of these collections, all of these materials are searchable on JSTOR, but you can also come directly to an institution's landing page like this. And so we could search or browse through just Rollins's collections if we wanted to. So we can scroll down. We can see some of the different kinds of archival and digital collection materials they're sharing here. If we go over and take a look at the University of Puget Sound's page, we can see again, they have their own kind of space within the JSTOR ecosystem that we can search across or scroll down and browse through. And we see the kind of wide variety of materials that they're sharing: images, text-based, audio, video. We see, they also have some faculty scholarship. So this is kind of a combination of archival, special collections, and institutional repository type materials. In addition to, of course, being able to search and browse at the institution level, we can also go into a specific collection. So let's say we wanted, we see that Puget Sound has a few collections. I'm focusing on Abby Williams Hill. So let's take a look at the journals collection. So we can go into that journals collection, and then we can see, again, a specific page dedicated to this collection that we can, read about the collection. We can search across the collection, or we can scroll down and browse through the various items in the collection. So let's say we wanted to take a look at this first item. We could click on that, and then we'll see at the item level the same kind of experience you would expect when interacting with or using any other material on JSTOR. We have the item here on the right-hand side of the screen that we could search across, or we can scroll and read through. We have the metadata here. This is the metadata that's being managed by Puget Sound on the back end with the digital asset management system. So they're determining and controlling what is presented here and how it's presented. As with anything else on JSTOR, you have your kind of standard kind of functionality that, students in particular have come to expect. You can download the item, you can cite the item. You can also save it to the JSTOR workspace, so you can bring it together with other materials from across the JSTOR platform. And this is something that students can do. Professors can also use this to gather shared workspaces for coursework and things like that. If we scroll down, we'll see, in addition to the metadata that's being managed and shared by Puget Sound, we also have this related text, as well as related images and media. And this is really, again, trying to take advantage of the benefit of having materials, such a wide range of materials on the JSTOR platform, and help make some of that serendipitous discovery. So these recommendations are managed by JSTOR. I'm using a combination of the metadata that's provided, as well as kind of usage trends across the platform. We're able to find and recommend other possibly related materials for people to find and use. And so you can see here, we kind of have a range of materials from the various Abby Williams Hill collections that Puget Sound has provided, but as well as from other collections and other materials that are being shared on JSTOR. And so let's say we wanted to take a look at this Mount Rainier image. We could click on that, and then that takes us over to this item, which we can then, investigate, download, save, and find even more related text and related images. So we could go down a real research rabbit hole if we wanted, just kind of following these pathways of search and discovery. All right, Before I switch over and show some of what the back end looks like, I did want to also show what audio video looks like when that's shared on the JSTOR platform, because we've done a lot of work in this area. So here we have an audio file that was shared by Rollins. It's this dedication address by President-elect Dwight D. Eisenhower. And part of the process when you upload audio or video content into our digital asset management system is we're creating an auto-generated transcript that it then is used when sharing that content to JSTOR. And we found that's really important because, of course, it increases the ability for discovery, because this then becomes full text searchable. It increases the usability because these the transcript is you can use these time links to kind of navigate the transcript, follow along as you're listening to the audio file. And of course, importantly, it's also very important for meeting accessibility mandates and making sure that anyone anywhere can find and use your audio and video materials. All right. One last thing is Rachel and Olivia both talked about, the kind of not just making their collections available on JSTOR, but being able to kind of measure the impact and share that both with internal stakeholders, the impact of sharing their collections on the JSTOR platform. And so once you start sharing your collections, you're given access to this usage dashboard that you can use to get both a high kind of, a high level view of just how many times has our content been viewed or downloaded on the JSTOR platform. But you can also use this to kind of dig into that impact in a little bit more detail and look at how many countries usage has come from. You can look at what the top used items are, what the top countries are that are finding and using your content. You can also look at the top institutions that are finding it and using your materials. Now, of course, if you're making your collections openly available, a person does not need to be coming from an institution. But if they are coming from a JSTOR participating institution, we're able to share that information with you. So you can get a sense of how broad the reach is of your collections on the JSTOR platform. And a trend that we see quite commonly is you'll see that oftentimes the single biggest kind of institutional user is yourself. Your own institution is finding and using your own digital collections on the JSTOR platform. But while you might be the single biggest kind of institutional user of your collections, that oftentimes only makes up a small percentage of the overall reach of your collections on JSTOR. So we see in this example, their own institution only makes up 5% of their total reach. So they are reaching their students and researchers and faculty by making their collections available on JSTOR, but they're also reaching a much broader audience than that. Okay, let's take a look at the back end very briefly and just give a sense of kind of how that digital asset management system works, and maybe address or speak to some of the things that Olivia and Rachel were speaking to in their interview with Roger. So this is what that digital asset management system looks like. And the first thing I want to focus on is just kind of the flexibility that's offered throughout this system. So to start, because the system is cloud-based, access is managed through username and password, it is very easy to at any time give access to people both within your institution or outside of your institution. If you're collaborating with other organizations or other people outside of your institution, it's very easy to provide and manage that kind of access. And you can do it yourself. We're always happy to do it, but you also have the ability to set that up directly yourself. So you can come to the admin, manage users. This is where you can add users, and you can also manage the level of access that users have. So you can set them up as administrators, which gives them access to the whole system, or you can set up more granular access that gives them access just to certain projects within the system, and even more granularly than that, gives them access to certain features or functionalities within the system. So Rachel and Olivia both talked about how they're working with student workers on their digital collections. And there are very easy ways within this system to set up controls and workflows that give students the ability to access just the pieces and just the functionality that you want them to. And that can also be used to set up workflows for approval and moving those kinds of student work forward. You also have flexibility in the way that you can create new collections within the system. You can do this all yourself directly in the system. Rachel talked a little bit about JSTOR's new AI-assisted tool called JSTOR SeqLite. which allows you to create a brand new collection just by dragging and dropping the files into the system. And then SeqLite will create that kind of first pass item level metadata for you to kind of take forward and do the work that you want to with it. You can also build new collections, essentially from the ground up. You can start by setting up your schema, creating new records, bringing in the media, kind of, if you're starting from scratch, there's a workflow designed specifically for that. And then there's also an option to build new collections that you might have pre-existing somewhere else. They might be in a spreadsheet or they might be in another system, and you can simply bring them in by dragging and dropping the spreadsheet of your existing metadata in and your media, and this process will essentially set that up from scratch in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes using whatever metadata schema, whatever setup you already have existing for that collection. Whichever of these routes that you follow, or whichever combination of these routes that you follow to create collections, there is flexibility in the metadata schema. So we have several kind of standard metadata schemas integrated into the system, but then you can either customize those or bring in your own schema, and you have complete control over the metadata fields and schemas that you want to use. So if we go into an existing project, we can see from within this project, we can easily do work either at the bulk level or at the item level. We can edit this existing content. We can easily delete or bring in new content. So you can manage this all entirely on your own directly within the system. And then once you have your materials, your media, and your metadata within the digital asset management system, you can take advantage of JSTOR's kind of existing infrastructure. So this is how you can then share content out for access to JSTOR. So we have in our system, we call those publishing targets, but you can use that to publish content to the JSTOR platform, either open or institutional. So those examples we were just looking at from Rollins and Puget Sound, that's how they manage that. These collections are in the digital asset management system, and then these targets for sharing to JSTOR have been set up. You can also, if you're interested in long-term managed preservation for your digital collections, this digital asset management system also incorporates or connects to Portico, which is Ithaca's long-term managed preservation service. So if you want that kind of long-term managed preservation, not just kind of short-term storage or backup for your digital collections, you have this easy integration with Portico. And when you opt to preserve a collection in Portico, you simply click this Start Preservation button, and that initiates the process of sending the metadata and the media to Portico, who will then take care of doing those kind of preservation activities, such as running fixity checks, checksums, checking for file obsolescence over time, storing everything on multiple geographic servers or geographically dispersed servers, so that you really have that guarantee and that peace of mind that your digital collections are preserved for the long term. Of course, you can also use the system to integrate with your own systems or other systems or get content out. This is not a closed system. This is built to be used to integrate with the other tools and services you might be using at your library or with partners outside of the library. In addition to sharing to JSTOR, you can also use this functionality to share to an Omeka site for building digital exhibits, or to share to any other service or site or tool that you might work with that supports an OAI server. So you can easily syndicate this content out to places such as your library catalog or the Digital Public Library of America. You can also at any point easily export the metadata as well as the content out of the system so that you can take it and use it wherever else you might want to, however else you might need to. So you have the flexibility to take advantage of the kind of built-in integration with the JSTOR ecosystem, as well as the ability to integrate with other tools and services that you might be using. All right, as we kind of look forward to the roadmap and the work that we're continuing to do to build out JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services, we are right now in the process of completing an upgrade to the technology that underpins, that supports the digital asset management system. And really one of the biggest kind of benefits to that work is it will enable us to iterate and adapt and introduce new services and tools and support for new features and functionality more easily and quickly in the future. We're also continuing to explore enhanced support for accessibility, which we know is so important for institutions, particularly with upcoming changes in laws and mandates. We're exploring enhanced support for integration with other tools through methods such as APIs or support for IIIF. And we're continuing to build out support through our charter program for that JSTOR SeqLite tool that we discussed a little bit. We also, as mentioned a couple times during the interview, have a robust participant success team, which I'm part of. I'm also joined by my colleague Lee Dotson, who has over 20 years of experience as a digital initiatives librarian working with digital collections. So we're here to support you in whatever work you're doing or whatever you're looking to accomplish. We also have a large support team that does things such as support the kinds of migrations that Rachel and Olivia were talking about. They also manage a robust support site, and we provide training materials through things like recorded videos as well as live webinars for training for our participants. And so, just in closing, before I hand it back to Roger, I think what we've tried to build here really is a flexible system that enables you to take advantage both of JSTOR's infrastructure, especially the access and impact that can be made available by sharing your digital collections through the JSTOR platform, while also supporting the work that you need to do both within stewardship and managing your digital collections and across systems that you might be using. All right, I will stop sharing my screen now. And I think welcome Roger back.
Thanks, Jason. And if Olivia and Rachel would like to rejoin at this point, we'd love to have a chance to answer questions that our attendees and participants might have. So I'll be selecting some questions and asking some of my own, but just a final opportunity, if you have questions for Olivia, Rachel, Jason, or myself, feel free to put them in the there's a question box in the webinar software. So maybe I could just reflecting on some of Jason's remarks and overview, and Olivia and Rachel asking you to think things through here. As you know, and as you can see, we've been making a substantial investment in stewardship and the JSTOR SeqLite tool over the past year or so. We were so excited by the opportunity to build for and with the community of libraries that you both are a part of, and you both made a decision to make the transition even before we had completed a lot of that work. So I wonder if I could just ask you to reflect a little bit about the functionalities that you've seen on JSTOR Stewardship or JSTOR Forum, as the case may be, and how does that experience compare with some of the previous systems in terms of the functionalities that you're seeing? Are we meeting those comparators? Are we perhaps exceeding them in some areas? When you made the transition, were you able to keep some of your existing workflows? Did you need to adapt significantly during that transition? Just anything you could kind of say further to help some of the other, some of the attendees kind of situate, what that experience was would I think be helpful. I won't call on one of you first. Rachel, go ahead. You unmuted.
I can start if you're okay with it. I will say we did not have great solutions in terms of metadata or access for a lot of our audio files. And Jason did a great job of pointing out one that was particularly important to us. It's, a big moment in campus history when the President of the United States was on, I don't know, our little local radio station. I don't actually know all the details about why that happened, but we had, we even have a recording of one of our first graduates talking about her time at the college. These are audio files that we paid big money to digitize from reel to reel. So we feel like they're important, and we wanted to do a good job of sharing them, in our digital spaces. And we really were not able to do much other than a little downloadable file and an ugly thumbnail in the past. And now not only are these files able to be fully, look like full transcripts that you can watch and read through as you listen, but we're able to meet all the standards that we've been putting on all our other systems in terms of access and ADA compliance, and folks can get to the content faster, they can search over it faster. So that has been a win in a big way that I don't think we even knew we had options for previous to the migration. And we're excited to do that work in the future with video as well. I know other people are doing that in big ways, and we're looking forward to doing more of that. We were really hamstrung by our previous system and audio and video, and now we're so happy with how the audio's come through. We're going to prioritize video in the future for our building.
Thanks, Rachel. Did you want to add anything to that, Olivia?
Yeah, sure. I think two of the things that come to mind for me are, one, as Jason was kind of speaking to, the flexibility in the metadata building in JSTOR in the back end. Because as was illustrated a bit, we have a lot of collections and a lot of them are very different in nature. And so we've had a really easy time being able to fit our metadata to our collections while creating standards for it at the same time, if that kind of makes sense. And then the second big one is a lot of the functionalities that JSTOR has, I've seen in other platforms, but I think they just work a lot better. One of the big ones I think about are bulk uploads using Excel files. I've done that in a lot of other platforms, and almost every time I get run into a headache of an issue, and I've never had that happen with JSTOR. It's almost always seamless. And I think a lot of that also comes from the fact that there's really good educational resources online as well. Anytime I can't figure out how to do something in Forum, I literally just Google it and a page comes up. And it's been really, really nice. Or I just reach out to the team and the response is almost immediate. So I think, yeah, it's similar to a lot of other tools, but just it seems like it's really well thought out. It's really robust, and it's really flexible, which has been great for us.
That's really great to hear. Thank you. It's, one of the things that we're really hoping is that we're presenting a viable substitute for some of these first generation systems, and I really appreciate hearing your experience about that. We do see stewardship as more than just a viable substitute. We're really investing in what we think it can be for at least some institutions, the future of collections management and collections processing. Jason mentioned the integration of Portico, and making sure that some institutions that might previously not have had access to preservation all of a sudden have gold standard preservation available to them with a click of a button. Perhaps even more significantly for some institutions will be JSTOR SQLite, which Rachel, you mentioned being a pilot participant of. We are building SQLite as a AI-assisted collections processing service, as you mentioned. And Jason, we have a question that came in. Can we talk a little bit about how SQLite is integrated into the system? So do you want to speak to that just for a moment?
Happy to. SQLite is fully integrated into the digital asset management system that I was demoing, and that Rachel and Olivia have talked about. So if you are a charter participant that's using JSTOR SQLite, then when you can, that's essentially another route to begin creating a collection. So you can upload your media via SQLite without any kind of existing metadata, any kind of existing information, and it'll give you that kind of initial first pass item level metadata that you can then work with directly within that digital asset management space to review, edit, contextualize, build out, and then if you're so inclined, share to JSTOR for access, or send to Portico for long-term managed preservation. So it is all kind of a fully integrated experience.
Thank you. And we'll be very happy to provide an individual institutional demo of the stewardship platform or the stewardship platform with the SQLite tool for anyone who's interested. Maybe I could bring us to a close with one final question which is really thinking about impact. And coming back to Olivia and Rachel, could you say just a little bit more about how you see JSTOR sharing collections onto the JSTOR platform, how you see that impacting teaching or learning or discovery? We believe that that's one of the most exciting, opportunities to deliver impact to users. And we've touched on it just a little bit, but if you'd like to say anything further about that, maybe we could wrap up with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. At our university, we do a lot of teaching. Like I teach anywhere from like 50 sessions a year, all on different subjects, and a lot of them relate to our campus history. And a lot of our digitized collections are related to campus history, so things like our yearbooks, our student newspaper, things of that nature. And it's been really, really wonderful to be able to do these class sessions and then point our students to the digitized version, which they often will be using for class projects or just their own interest, or I have student groups on campus who want to know about their own history, and I'm able to point them in the direction of those collections so they can kind of learn about their own history on their own. So I think it's just brought really great utility to our collection in a way that it just wasn't as accessible before. And I see that like every day.
Rachel, did you want to add, or if not, we can go ahead.
I was just going to mention that faculty are really interested in helping students think bigger than chatbots right now. AI is kind of a big thing in higher ed. How are we going to work with it? Is it working against us? And these collections have been ways that faculty can rethink what does it mean for students to interact with primary sources and unique materials in a meaningful way. And I'm just so happy that we're there for that moment when they're really having to rethink what learning looks like in their classroom and what student projects and outputs look like for their students. So it's been a win in that dialogue as well.
Thank you, because we believe strongly that we have an opportunity to continue building the tool sets for using this content, and we're so excited about some of that opportunity as well. I know we're just about at the top of the hour. There are a few more questions, but I think I'm going to bring us to a close at this point. Rachel, Olivia, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. This has been, I hope, as helpful for all our attendees as it seemed to be to me. And we're really looking forward to continuing to serve the library community and the archival community with this what we believe will be an expanding set of tools and platforms. So thank you so much for your participation and support, everyone.